Chapter 1009. The intent of the spear and the intent of the sea merged together. The spear momentum was like the sea, with raging waves crashing on the shore. The sea was boundless, destroying everything. Strong, too strong. Back off, back off. In all directions, the hearts of the spectators sped up in the face of this move. They were terrified, as if they would be crushed by the sea in the next moment. Countless people screamed and retreated in panic. Ahui and Ale, who were standing on the ground, also had the same feeling. This feeling made them feel like they would be bombarded into ashes in the next moment. However, in front of them, a stalwart figure erupted with a shocking aura, blocking everything for them. Roar! There was a faint dragon roar coming from his body. The two dragon forces burst out, causing Lu Ming's body to glow purple again. Boom! This time, Lu Ming put away the infinite dragon spear, stepped forward, and struck out with his palm. This palm was very ordinary, but it seemed to have the power to suppress the heavens and split everything. With a loud boom, everyone was shocked to see that the sea seemed to have been split into two by Lu Ming's palm. The endless sea swept and then collapsed. Bang! In the middle of the sea, a blue spear also collapsed. In the next moment, the sea disappeared, and so did the spear. The sky above Lishui City regained its tranquility. There was only a figure retreating rapidly, spilling a trace of blood in the air. Countless people looked at this scene in horror, because the person who retreated was Hai Ziming. Hai Ziming was defeated and retreated while vomiting blood. God, even Hai Ziming was defeated. Lu Shaoqing's combat strength is too amazing. In the entire central continent, Hai Ziming is almost ranked as a third-class genius, but he was still defeated. Could Lu Shaoqing be a third-class genius? It's very likely. Lu Shaoqing is actually ranked as a third-class genius. How terrifying. There was an uproar all around. Countless people looked at Lu Ming in shock. Impossible, how is this possible? Ling Yunкang roared, his eyes wide in disbelief. Lu Ming had defeated Hai Ziming. How could he be so strong? One had to know that there were not many people who could defeat Hai Ziming in the vast central continent. After all, in the vast middle continent, there were only 18 overlords. Even if some of the weaker forces had their own peerless geniuses, how many could there be? Ling Yunкang was furious, but the Shao clan members were ecstatic. They were saved. Ling Yunкang swore a blood oath that as long as Hai Ziming lost, he would not touch the Shao family in any way. I lost. Hai Ziming stood in the air, his eyes filled with astonishment. Thanks for letting me win. Lu Ming cupped his hands. Lu Ming estimated that Hai Ziming's talent was not inferior to Eastern Wasteland King Fen Tian, Dongfang Yu and the others. Lu Shaoqing, with your talent and combat strength, it's a pity that you didn't participate in the Battle of Providence. However, the Battle of Providence is only one of the stations for our rise. Even if you didn't participate, I believe that with your talent, you can also rise. Hai Ziming cupped his fists and revealed a look of admiration. He was very carefree and magnanimous, completely different from Ling Yunкang. You're welcome. Lu Ming smiled slightly. He nodded in his heart. This was normal. It was impossible for everyone to be like Ling Yunкang. Otherwise, the floating mountain sect would not be far from destruction. The battle has ended. Ling Yunкang, from now on, you and I don't owe each other anything. At this moment, Hai Ziming looked at Ling Yunкang and said. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that Hai Ziming owed Ling Yunкang a favor, which was why he helped him. After saying that, Hai Ziming's figure moved, turned into a rainbow light, and disappeared in the air. What? You're still not leaving? Lu Ming looked at Ling Yunкang. Ling Yunкang waved his sleeves. He wanted to make trouble, but unfortunately, he had already made a blood oath, so he could only grit his teeth and leave. He could not even order others to deal with the Shao family in the future. In an instant, no one from the floating mountain sect was left. Lu Ming came to the front of the Shao family. With a wave of his hand, his true origin gushed out. The true origin that sealed their cultivation was broken by Lu Ming one by one, and they regained their freedom. Thank you, young Master Lu. Thank you, young Master Lu, for saving our lives. Everyone from the Shao family thanked Lu Ming profusely. This time, if it wasn't for Lu Ming, they would most likely be dead. Everyone, There's no need to be so polite. From now on, Ling Yunkong won't make things difficult for the Xiao family. You can call the rest of the Xiao family back. I'll go get Senior Xiao and the others, Lu Ming said. The Xiao family nodded and moved in groups. Lu Ming stepped into the air and flew towards the small island from before. Following Lu Ming's departure, the onlookers also dispersed. However, Lu Xiaoqing's name had spread throughout Lishui City and was spreading in all directions at an alarming speed. He believed that it would not be long before it spread throughout the territory controlled by the floating mountain. Many people were curious about Lu Xiaoqing. Who was he that suddenly appeared after the Battle of Providence? When Xiao Zhan, Hui, and Lei heard the specific news, they were overjoyed and were even more grateful to Lu Ming. Lu Ming had completely resolved this matter. They would not have to flee in the future. Everyone returned to the Xiao family. Xiao Zhan arranged for the Xiao family to begin rebuilding the Xiao residence. Because the Xiao family was affected by the battle, many buildings were destroyed. As for Lu Ming, he continued to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days passed. His water concept was slowly approaching the 3rd level of greater mastery. He was getting closer and closer to the other concepts. On this day, a piece of news spread rapidly in Lishui City. In the west of Lishui City, there was a black lake. There was actually a purifying lotus throne growing in the black lake. Now the purifying lotus throne was about to mature. It's actually a purifying lotus throne? Let's go, we can't miss it. Let's go. As soon as the news spread, countless people moved towards the west of Lishui City. However, there were also many people who were smarter and did not go. How precious is the purifying lotus throne? It's extremely useful for cultivating water concept or water attribute cultivation methods. It can even allow one to break through bottlenecks. It will definitely attract many experts. Even old monsters who have been in seclusion for many years will appear. That's right. Although the purifying lotus throne is not very useful for 4th level concepts, it's quite helpful for 3rd level concepts. Especially for 4th level concepts. When the time comes, there will be many experts. If we go, we'll just be sending ourselves to death. These people sneered and did not move. They waited in Lishui City for news. The purifying lotus throne. Lu Ming's eyes lit up when he heard the news. He must obtain the purifying lotus throne. As long as he obtained the purifying lotus throne, his water concept would make great progress in a short period of time. It might even surpass the other 4 concepts. In that case, his cultivation would begin to improve again. It had been more than half a year, but his cultivation had not improved. Now that the other prodigies who participated in the Battle of Providence were cultivating in seclusion and digesting their gains, their cultivation would definitely improve rapidly. Lu Ming speculated that the cultivation of Di Shun, Shuejiani, Ao2, and the others would definitely surpass his. Chapter 10:10. Immediately, Lu Ming bid farewell to Xiao Zhan, Hui and Lei. He had stayed long enough in the Xiao family in Lishui City. It was time for him to leave. Big brother Lu, will you come to see us in the future? Hui looked at Lu Ming reluctantly. Lei didn't say anything, but her eyes were also reluctant to part. I will. When I have time, I will come to see you. You have to cultivate well. If there's anything, just send me a message. Lu Ming smiled and nodded at Xiao Zhan. Then, he rose into the air and flew towards the Blackwater Lake. The Blackwater Lake was millions of miles west of Lishui City. The Blackwater Lake wasn't big, only about 100 miles in radius. When Lu Ming arrived, the Blackwater Lake was already surrounded by people. These people weren't just from Lishui City. They came from all over. There were men, women, old and young. Many of them had powerful auras and profound cultivations. That's Lu Xiaoqing. Lu Ming's arrival caused a commotion. Some people recognized him. Many people looked at him with seriousness and vigilance. Lu Ming's battle strength was extremely terrifying. Even Hai Ziming wasn't his opponent. In the spirit embryo realm, there were few who could match him. This was a strong competitor. Lu Ming ignored everyone's gazes and looked towards the Blackwater Lake. The Blackwater Lake was just like its name. The lake water was black. It was said that the lake water was highly toxic. Even spirit embryo realm experts would be in great danger if they came in contact with it. In the middle of the Blackwater Lake, there was a green lotus platform. At this moment, it was emitting a strong medicinal fragrance. This was the purifying water lotus platform. However, it was obvious that it wasn't fully mature yet. The purifying water lotus platform was a special spirit medicine. If it wasn't fully mature, it wouldn't be a spirit medicine. Instead, it would be a highly toxic poison. Only when it was fully mature would it be a spirit medicine. It was extremely helpful for cultivating water attribute techniques and water concept. So many experts have come. It seems like we have no chance. Look, that's Lu Shaoqing. He's the genius who defeated Hai Ziming. His battle strength is extremely terrifying. There are also quite a few peak Sea of Souls realm warriors. Ordinary warriors in the exceptional spiritual sea realm are nothing. But there are several old monsters among them. Around them, many people were discussing in low voices. Some of them were sighing, knowing that they had no hope. The so-called strong practitioners of the old monster level were the names given to those extremely terrifying existences in the spirit embryo realm. In the spirit embryo realm, there were a small number of people who had awakened the bloodline of a god, but were stuck in the spirit embryo realm, unable to break through to the spirit god realm. Furthermore, they had lived for a very long time, and were extremely terrifying in all aspects. Only then were they called old monsters. These people were different from ordinary people with perfect spirit embryos. When they were young, they were all god-level geniuses. However, it was very difficult to break through to the spirit god realm. Many prodigies with bloodlines of the first and second level of the god realm would be stuck at the limit of the spirit embryo realm, unable to break through for the rest of their lives. These people were the most terrifying ones in the spirit embryo realm, and their battle prowess was extremely terrifying. Today there were quite a few such people present. Furthermore, the number of people was still increasing. That's Yang Song, one of the top 10 geniuses of the Floating Mountain sect. And one of the top 10 geniuses, Wukong. Someone exclaimed as he looked at the sky. On the east and west sides, there was a young man walking over in the air. His aura was dignified, and his bearing was extraordinary. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. During this period of time, he had gained some understanding of the top 10 geniuses of the Floating Mountain sect. Yang Song was ranked 4th among the top 10 geniuses, while Wukong was ranked 6th. They were all extremely powerful geniuses. He didn't expect that the purifying lotus platform would attract all the geniuses of the Floating Mountain sect. The gazes of many of the old monsters turned serious. Geniuses like Yang Song and Wukong might not be as strong as them in terms of cultivation, but their battle prowess couldn't be judged by common sense at all. Everyone waited quietly, and more people came. Half a day later, the purifying lotus platform suddenly shone brightly, and a rich medicinal fragrance could be smelled even from 100 miles away. The purifying lotus platform has matured. The eyes of countless people burst forth with a blazing light. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, at least a few hundred people rushed towards the Blackwater Lake. Scram, the purifying lotus platform is mine. You're courting death, it's mine. The one who's going to die is you. Angry roars rang out, and all kinds of lights burst forth continuously. Miserable shrieks rang out continuously, and fresh blood dyed the Blackwater Lake red. Splash! Energy surged, and the water of the Blackwater Lake churned and splashed in all directions. Ah! Miserable shrieks rang out, as some people were splashed by the water of the Blackwater Lake. Sizzling sounds could be heard as their bodies rapidly corroded. Not good, be careful, this lake water is highly poisonous. Many people cried out in alarm, as they circulated their vital essence to protect themselves. However, the lake water was incomparably poisonous, and when it splashed onto their vital essence, even their vital essence would be rapidly corroded. Get down! Angry roars rang out continuously, as some people were struck into the lake and drowned by the water. Their protective vital essence was rapidly corroded, and in the end, they let out miserable shrieks as their corpses disappeared without a trace. Many people were shocked and began to retreat, not daring to charge forward anymore. It was too dangerous. In just a short while, over 100 people had died, and they were all strong practitioners of the spirit embryo realm and above. Those practitioners of the spirit embryo realm and below didn't dare to charge forward. As long as they were splashed by a drop of the lake water, it would be a dead end. However, there were still many people who charged forward. They were all experts, and at a glance, almost all of them were strong practitioners of the 6th level of the spirit embryo realm and above. Suddenly, the lake water churned, and a few huge creatures appeared from the black water lake. They were huge black snakes with dense scales and cold gazes. They were extremely thick, and each of them had a diameter of over 10 meters. The huge black snakes churned, and the lake water churned violently, stirring up thousands of waves that swept towards many people. Instantly, many people were swept into the lake, and they let out miserable shrieks. Blackwater mystical snake, it's the Blackwater mystical snake. Someone cried out in alarm. Splash! The Blackwater mystical snake was originally a top grade 7 demonic beast, and in the Blackwater lake, it was like a fish in water, terrifying beyond compare. In the Blackwater lake, a total of 6 Blackwater mystical snakes appeared, protecting the purifying lotus platform in the middle. With a sweep of their tails, they brought up huge waves. No one dared to face them head-on, and they all dodged. Evil creature, you're courting death. A few white-haired old men unleashed beams of divine light to disperse the lake water, and charged at the Blackwater mystical snake. It's the strong practitioners of the old monster level. Someone cried out. The few elders were extremely powerful, far surpassing normal spirit embryos. At the same time, everyone saw that Yang Song and Wukong were also incomparably powerful. They rushed forward with extreme speed and fought with the Blackwater mystical snake. There were also some strong practitioners of the 9th and 8th level of the spirit embryo realm, and they also rushed forward with all their might. On the Blackwater lake, the battle continued, and it was chaos. Lu Ming blended into the crowd and rushed forward. He had the power of devouring, so he was not afraid of the poison in the lake water. However, he was not in a hurry to rush forward. Instead, he blended into the crowd and unleashed his power of devouring. Many experts were killed, and this was a huge resource. How could Lu Ming waste it? He clenched his fist, and a strong power of devouring exploded, enveloping those who were killed. Instantly, the billowing blood essence, vital essence, runes, and so on were all devoured by Lu Ming. Chapter 10-11. On the surface of the lake, the battle was intense. Even the Blackwater mystical snakes couldn't withstand the attacks of so many experts. Their huge bodies were covered in wounds. 2 of them were even killed, their huge corpses floating on the surface of the lake. The remaining Blackwater mystical snakes sank into the lake. The purifying lotus platform is mine. Once the Blackwater mystical snakes retreated, many people went crazy and rushed towards the purifying lotus platform. You want to get the purifying lotus platform? You're courting death. A blue-haired elder roared and grabbed several strong practitioners of the 8th and 9th level of spirit embryo realm. They were torn apart and killed on the spot. Too strong. This blue-haired elder's ability was far above normal perfected spirit embryos. He was a strong practitioner of the old monster level. In other directions, there were strong practitioners like him, who rushed towards the purifying lotus platform with all their might. Among them, Yang Song and Wukong were also strong and invincible. They weren't any weaker than the old monsters. Swoosh! At this moment, Lu Ming also started to move. His body was like flowing light as he rushed towards the purifying lotus platform. His speed was so fast that he left many people behind. Stay here. Suddenly, 2 terrifying attacks flew towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming swept his gaze across and discovered that the ones attacking him were 2 elders. These 2 elders had perfected spirit embryos, but they were only ordinary perfected spirit embryos. You're courting death. Lu Ming shouted coldly. The devouring power in his left palm burst forth and enveloped the 2 elders. He pointed out 2 fingers with his right palm, and 2 spear lights appeared and pierced towards the 2 elders. Not good retreat. Enveloped by the devouring power, the 2 elders felt that all the energy in their bodies was being devoured. They couldn't unleash their abilities at all. At the same time, the The two spear lights were extremely terrifying, threatening their lives. The two of them roared angrily, their eyes flashing with incomparable shock. They knew that they had encountered a terrifying prodigy, but it was too late to retreat now. The two spear lights were in front of their eyes in an instant. "Spare us," the two of them shouted. But in the next moment, the spear lights pierced through the heart of their brows. The devouring power burst forth and devoured all the essence of the two elders. Normal perfected spirit embryos could be killed by Lu Ming with a flip of his hand. Whoosh! Lu Ming's figure moved, rushing forward at an extremely fast speed. Soon he was at the forefront. Die! A cold roar rang out, and a terrifying claw light enveloped Lu Ming. Without hesitation, Lu Ming struck out with his palm. Bang! His palm struck a blue claw. His body only swayed slightly, but his opponent was forced back by his attack. Lu Ming took a look and saw that it was the blue-haired old man, an old monster-level expert. At this time, the old man looked at Lu Ming with a solemn expression. The old man didn't expect a young man to be so powerful. Lu Ming glanced at him and did not continue to attack. Instead, he rushed towards the purifying lotus platform. There were already people approaching from several other directions. The blue-haired old man's expression changed, but he didn't continue to attack. Instead, he rushed towards the purifying lotus platform. A blue godly eagle appeared above his head along with a golden chakra. He executed the bloodline fusion and turned into a blue godly eagle as he pounced towards the purifying water lotus platform. There were a total of 7 figures approaching the purifying water lotus platform from all directions. Yang Song, Wukong, Lu Ming, and 4 other old men. The 7 of them were the fastest, approaching the purifying water lotus platform. Get lost. You're the one who should get lost. Die. The 7 of them looked at each other, and a great battle broke out. Terrifying attacks poured towards each other, and a chaotic battle broke out. However, everyone intentionally avoided the purifying water lotus platform, and their attacks didn't land on it. Boom! Boom! Explosions continued, and all kinds of light scattered. Whoosh! A blue godly eagle pounced towards Lu Ming, and the wind was terrifying. It was the blue-haired old man again. Old man, you're courting death. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold, and a 5-colored light burst out. He activated the suppressing Hell Heaven skill, and struck out with his palm. Bang! The palm struck the blue godly eagle, and the eagle's claws were shattered into pieces. A terrifying force rushed out, and the blue godly eagle collapsed. The blue-haired old man's figure reappeared, and blood spurted out of his mouth. He retreated rapidly, and his eyes were filled with fear. Then a terrifying devouring force shrouded him. Lu Ming took a step forward, and appeared in front of the blue-haired old man, and struck out with his palm. Wait, spare me! The blue-haired old man screamed in fear, but Lu Ming's palm didn't stop, and struck down with force. Crack! A big hole appeared in the blue-haired old man's body, and blood flowed out. However, he wasn't dead yet, and he wanted to escape. Now he couldn't care less about the purifying water lotus platform. He only wanted to escape, and run for his life. But how could Lu Ming let him escape? Bang! He took a step forward, and the power of the 9 dragons' air steps exploded. The blue-haired old man screamed in pain, and his body was torn apart. Then, all the essence of the blue-haired old man was devoured by Lu Ming. The blue-haired old man had only awakened a level 1 divine bloodline. How could he be Lu Ming's match? Even if his cultivation was 2 levels higher than Lu Ming, he was still easily killed. At the back, the other people who were chasing after him were shocked. Lu Ming was too terrifying. An old monster-level expert was killed just like that. They looked at Lu Ming with fear in their eyes. At this moment, the battle for the purifying water lotus platform was still going on fiercely. Yang Song and Wukong joined forces to fight against the 3 old monsters, and the 3 old monsters were at a disadvantage. Swoosh! Lu Ming took a step forward and approached the purifying water lotus platform. Lu Xiaoqing. Yang Song swept a glance at Lu Ming with a hint of seriousness. Obviously, he already knew that Lu Ming had defeated Hai Ziming. Hai Ziming's strength wasn't weaker than his. He wasn't confident that Lu Ming could defeat Hai Ziming. Lu Ming glanced at the crowd indifferently. He took a step forward and reached out his hand to grab the purifying water lotus platform. Don't even think about it. Wukong's cold light flashed as the long spear in his hand pierced towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming struck out with his palm. Wukong's body shook as he retreated. Boom! Then, Lu Ming threw out a punch, and an old monster spat out blood and retreated. His many people gasped. Lu Ming was too strong. Wukong, an old monster-level expert, was easily injured by Lu Ming. No one could stop him. You better not have a death wish. Lu Ming swept his gaze across them. The few old monsters, as well as Yang Tsung and Wukong, had ugly expressions. Lu Shaoqing, although you're strong, there are so many of us here. We're not afraid of you, Wukong said. At this moment, many experts had appeared from all directions. However, they watched from afar and didn't dare to get close. You can try, Lu Ming said coldly. Yang Tsung, Wukong, I suggest that we join forces. After defeating this person, we can seize the purifying water lotus platform with our own strength. Otherwise, if the purifying water lotus platform is taken by this person, we won't get anything. An old monster said. Alright, I agree. Wukong nodded. Yang Tsung frowned. He didn't want to offend a genius like Lu Ming, unless it was necessary. Yang Tsung, what about you? Chapter 10-12. Yang Tsung muttered to himself, and actually took a few steps back. Although the purifying lotus platform is precious, it isn't of much use to me. I won't fight for this lotus platform. Alright, that's what you said. Wukong's eyes lit up. Yang Tsung was a powerful opponent. If he retreated now, they would have one less powerful opponent after defeating Lu Ming. In Wukong's heart, the biggest opponent here was Lu Ming, followed by Yang Kong. As for the other old monsters, Wukong wasn't afraid of them. The old monsters' eyes also lit up as they looked at Lu Ming. Now they just had to deal with Lu Ming. Boom! 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 A violent aura rose up. Above Wukong and the other three old monsters, resplendent light appeared as all kinds of bloodlines appeared. Among the three old monsters, two of them had the bloodline of the second level of the god level, and one had the bloodline of the first level of the god level. All of them had the cultivation of the peak of perfection of the spirit embryo. As for Wukong, he had the bloodline of the sixth level of the god level, and his cultivation was at the late stage of the eighth level of the spirit embryo. However, his aura was stronger than any of the old monsters. Almost at the same time, the four of them executed the fusion of bloodlines and attacked Lu Ming. Roar! A dragon's roar came from Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming exploded with the dragon's power, and a layer of purple light spread out on the surface of his body. With the explosion of the dragon's power, Lu Ming stepped out and threw out a few punches. Boom! 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 The space trembled as the terrifying fist energy attacked the four of them. The three old monsters were forced back. Only Wukong was slightly better, but he was also forced back. Five-colored light covered his fists as he executed the suppressing Hell Heaven technique. With the increase of the concept of water, the five types of concepts exploded at the same time, and the power became stronger. With a punch, it seemed like it could destroy everything. Fight, fight! Lu Ming roared as his battle intent burst forth. Light shone as though he was a young war god. He moved unhindered as his fists shook the sky. With his strength alone, he suppressed the four of them. The space rumbled as dozens of loud sounds rang out. Not far away, Yang Tsung was extremely shocked. Then he smiled bitterly. As expected of someone who could defeat Hai Ziming, he was no match for him. Further away, the others were even more shocked. Lu Ming was able to suppress the four experts by himself. After all, in the eyes of ordinary people, experts at the level of old freaks were practically invincible existences in the spirit embryo realm. They'd awakened their god bloodlines, yet were unable to step into the domain enlightened spirit god realm, and they cultivated for at least 1,000 years. Some had even cultivated for 2,000 to 3,000 years. So how terrifying was this? Furthermore, there was also the monstrous prodigy Wukong. The four of them joined forces, but they were still no match for Lu Ming. After dozens of moves, Wukong and the other three finally could not hold on any longer. Under the pressure of Lu Ming's terrifying fist force, They all reverted to their human forms. Their bodies undulated, and their breaths were weak. They were more or less injured. At this moment, the four of them were incomparably shocked. They looked at Lu Ming in disbelief. A third-class genius. Lu Shaoqing has definitely reached the combat strength of a third-class genius. That's right. Even some of the weaker third-class geniuses might not have such combat strength. Third-class geniuses, they're the top group of people in the central continent. There are only 3 of them in the floating mountain. There were waves of discussions in the surroundings. No one dared to step forward, even if the purifying lotus platform was right in front of them. Ordinary perfected spirit embryos could be killed by Lu Ming's combat strength with a flip of his hand. Who dared to step forward? Lu Ming glanced at everyone, then stepped forward and walked towards the purifying lotus platform. Wu Kong and the other old freaks did not move. Although they were unwilling, they knew that this time, the purifying lotus platform belonged to Lu Ming. No one could compete with Lu Ming. Splash! At this moment, the lake water churned, and a huge creature suddenly appeared. It swallowed the purifying lotus platform into its mouth, and then dived into the water. It was a huge snake, the black water serpent. No, it was not a black water serpent. It was even bigger, and had an even more shocking aura. It was the king of the black water serpents, the black water king snake. You're courting death. Lu Ming shouted coldly and stepped forward. The 9 dragons' heaven-trampling steps was unleashed, and a terrifying force blasted into the black water lake. Rumble! The entire black water lake shook, and huge waves surged into the sky. Ah, this is bad. Lu Shaoqing has gone crazy. Go, go! Retreat! The strong practitioners around them flew into the sky in fear, and then to the shore of the lake. The lake water churned, and huge waves surged into the sky. Under the terrifying force, the black water king snake's figure appeared and disappeared. Lu Ming waved his hand, and hundreds of spears condensed in the air and shot into the lake. The black water king snake hissed angrily, and rushed out of the black water lake, flying towards the shore. It's not the black water king snake, it's a human. Lu Ming's gaze turned cold. This black water king snake was not the real black water king snake. It was a human with the bloodline of the black water king snake, and had used bloodline fusion. This person was very scheming. His bloodline was the black water king snake, so he was not afraid of the black water lake's poison. He had already dived to the bottom of the lake, and waited for an opportunity to seize the purifying lotus throne. But how could Lu Ming let this person escape so easily? He took a step forward and chased after the black water king snake like a ray of light. Just as the black water king snake was about to escape the black water lake, a white blade light slashed towards the black water king snake. This blade light was extremely terrifying, and emitted a bone-chilling cold. The black water king snake was shocked. Its huge snake body curled up and transformed back into a human. This was an old man with almost all his hair falling out. His eyes were sinister as he avoided the blade light, and wanted to escape from the other side. But at this moment, Lu Ming had already arrived. He punched out, and the fist light enveloped the old man. The old man's body shook violently and was stopped. Old Blackwater! Someone exclaimed as they recognized this old man. This old man's bloodline was actually at the 3rd level of the divine realm. But for some reason, he did not break through to the spiritual god realm. However, his combat strength was extremely powerful, and he was very famous in the floating mountain region. Whoosh! At this moment, the temperature in the surroundings dropped rapidly. Many people looked around, and their eyes widened. It turned out that the blade light didn't hit old monster Blackwater. Instead, it landed on the Blackwater Lake. At this moment, the entire Blackwater Lake was frozen, turning into an ice lake. A tall and burly young man stepped on the air, and appeared on the other side of the Blackwater King Snake. He and Lu Ming stood on both sides of the Blackwater King Snake, surrounding the Blackwater King Snake. Chu Kuang! It's Chu Kuang! Someone exclaimed. Chu Kuang is here too. This is going to be interesting. Could it be that Chu Kuang is also interested in the purifying lotus seat? Many people were shocked, but their eyes were also shining. Chu Kuang, who was ranked 2nd among the 10 sky prides of the floating mountain, had appeared. Chu Kuang was tall and burly. He was dressed casually, and carried a battle blade on his back. His gaze skipped the Blackwater Kingsnake and landed on Lu Ming. "You're Lu Shaoqing?" Chu Kuang asked. "That's right." Lu Ming nodded. "I heard that you defeated Ling Yunкang and Hai Ziming?" Chu Kuang asked again. Chapter 10:13. Ha ha ha. Chu Kuang suddenly burst into laughter and said, "Stand up for them? How is that possible? If someone like Ling Yunкang were to do evil in the name of the Floating Mountain sect, I'd cut him down with my saber." Lu Ming's eyes moved, but he didn't say anything. He had heard of Chu Kuang before. He was ranked second among the top 10 prodigies of Floating Mountain. He was extremely powerful and talented. At the same time, he was wild and liked to make friends. He didn't seem like someone like Ling Yunкang could be compared to. "I'm just passing by today. I didn't expect to encounter such an interesting event. I love to find experts to spar with. Lu Shaoqing, why don't you accompany me? Let's use this Purifying Lotus platform as the wager. If you win, you can have the Purifying Lotus platform. If I win, the Purifying Lotus platform is mine." Chu Kuang looked at Lu Ming. He still did not look at Old Monster Blackwater. "All right." Lu Ming nodded and agreed without hesitation. Chu Kuang was obviously a battle-hungry person. Lu Ming knew that avoiding a battle was useless against such a person. As long as he was stronger, Chu Kuang would be convinced. Boom! Boom! Lu Ming and Chu Kuang's aura burst out as they faced each other. Early stage of spirit embryo 9th level. Powerful indeed. Lu Ming's gaze flickered. Chu Kuang's cultivation had already reached the early stage of the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm, which was higher than that of the Emperor God during the War of Providence. Of course, having a high cultivation did not mean that his combat power was stronger than that of the Emperor God. Damn it! Old Monster Blackwater was sandwiched between the two of them. His face turned ugly. The two of them wanted to fight and completely ignored him. At this moment he gritted his teeth and rushed to the side, wanting to take the opportunity to escape. At this moment, Lu Ming and Chu Kuang moved and attacked Old Monster Blackwater. A terrifying force enveloped Old Monster Blackwater, causing his face to turn pale. Old Monster Blackwater used all his strength to attack, but the force from Lu Ming and Chu Kuang landed on his body, causing him to tremble violently. Lu Ming and Chu Kuang were fighting with Old Monster Blackwater between them. No matter how powerful Old Monster Blackwater was, he had awakened a level 3 divine level bloodline and had cultivated for thousands of years. However, he was still in a miserable state in the fight between Lu Ming and Chu Kuang. He could not charge forward at all. Instead, he was sent flying and spurting blood from his mouth. Boom! 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 Lu Ming's fists continued to attack. Streams of fist gleams blasted forward like meteors. On the other hand, Chu Kuang's palms continued to slash out. Streams of bone-chilling saber gleams slashed out violently. The pitiful Old Monster Blackwater was stuck in the middle, trying his best to defend himself. The onlookers looked at each other, sympathized with Old Monster. Old Monster. "Ah, I don't want the Purifying Lotus platform anymore." Old Monster Blackwater took the Purifying Lotus. Lu Ming and Chu Kuang purposely avoided the Purifying Lotus platform. Old Monster Blackwater also took the opportunity to dash out of the encirclement. He ran far away and looked at the field with lingering fear. Haha, with one less hindrance, I can fight with all my strength. Chu Kuang laughed and unsheathed his battle saber. An even colder saber light was sent out. Great! Lu Ming's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He stepped forward and increased the power of the suppressing Hell Heaven art to fight with Chu Kuang. No one dared to touch the Purifying Lotus. Everyone knew that if anyone dared to take the opportunity to take the Purifying Lotus, they would end up like Old Monster Blackwater. They didn't have the confidence to survive the battle between the two prodigies. In the blink of an eye, the two had exchanged dozens of blows. Chu Kuang was strong. He was in the early stage of the 9th tier of Spirit Embryo Realm. The bloodline he had awakened was definitely not weak. Lu Ming had a feeling that Chu Kuang was a sky pride of the same level as Shuejini and Ao Tuesday. If they fought at the same level, he would not be any weaker than them. His combat strength was extremely terrifying. Whoosh! Chu Kuang slashed out with his battle saber. A white ice crystal appeared in the air, and the ice on the black water lake became thicker. He has cultivated the ice concept to such a level. No, there is also the water concept. Lu Ming's heart stirred. Obviously, Chu Kuang had merged the ice concept with the water concept. His power had increased exponentially. Roar! A dragon's roar was heard. 2 more dragon energies erupted from Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's strength increased greatly. He walked out and punched out. The punch shattered Chu Kuang's saber light, and the sky was filled with ice shards. Chu Kuang's eyes turned serious. An ice river appeared above his head. 7 chakras shone on the ice river. He had awakened a 7th divine bloodline. As soon as the ice river appeared, the air became even colder. Hundreds of miles were shrouded in the cold air. Many people retreated. If they were shrouded in the cold air, even their true yuan would be frozen. However, when Chu Kuang's bloodline appeared, he did not perform the bloodline integration. Instead, with a flash of his eyes, the bloodline disappeared into his body again. He retreated hurriedly, dodging Lu Ming's fist gleams. He shouted, "Stop, stop. Don't fight anymore, don't fight anymore." Lu Ming was stunned and stopped. The crowd was also stunned. Chu Kuang hadn't used his full strength yet. Why did he stop and admit defeat? Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. Chu Kuang was a straightforward person. He probably felt that even if he merged the bloodlines, he wasn't confident. Lu Shaoqing, I admire you. This purifying lotus platform is yours. Chu Kuang put his battle saber back into the scabbard on his back and grinned. Lu Ming stretched out his hand and sucked the purifying lotus platform into his hand. He then kept it in his storage ring. Many people were envious, especially the seniors who were stuck in the perfected spirit embryo realm. However, they didn't dare to make a move in front of an expert like Lu Ming. Thank you. Lu Ming kept the purifying lotus platform. He was in a good mood and cupped his fists at Chu Kuang. Haha, you're welcome. I'm no match for you. Of course, this purifying lotus platform is yours. Lu Shaoqing, it's a pity that I can't see you in the battle of destiny. How about it? If you think highly of me, let's be friends. I'll treat you to a drink. Chu Kuang laughed. He was very forthright. Lu Ming nodded in his heart. Chu Kuang was indeed as bold and unrestrained as the rumors said. He liked to make friends. Ling Yinkong couldn't be compared to him at all. Since Brother Chu invited me, I'll naturally give you face. Unfortunately, I need to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. I'm afraid we can't have a drink together. Lu Ming said. Chu Kuang nodded and said, I understand. How about this? I'll be in Sunset Moon City for the next few days. If Brother Lu finishes his seclusion in 10 days, you can come to Sunset Moon City to find me. There's a grand event happening recently. I'll go with Brother Lu to take a look. After saying that, Chu Kuang turned around and left. Looking at Chu Kuang's back, Lu Ming thought of Yin Kuang too. Their personalities were very similar. They were both bold and unrestrained. However, Yin Kuang too was more arrogant, unrestrained, and daring. He was more arrogant than Chu Kuang, and didn't give face to anyone. In comparison, he had fewer friends. Chapter 10:14. Hundreds of thousands of miles later, Lu Ming appeared at the bottom of a small lake. He then entered the mountain river diagram and sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. He began to refine the essence blood and concept runes that he had devoured previously. This time, Lu Ming had devoured hundreds of experts at the spirit embryo realm and above. Among them, there was no lack of people at the 8th or 9th level of the spirit embryo realm. There were even people at the perfected spirit embryo realm. Furthermore, many of them cultivated the concept of water. So many concept runes were continuously refined and merged into Lu Ming's own concept of water runes. His concept of water quickly rose. In just a few hours, Lu Ming's concept of water had broken through to the upper 3rd level and continued to rise. Early 3rd level, middle 3rd level, late 3rd level. When all the concept runes were refined, Lu Ming's concept of water rose to the late 3rd level. When Lu Ming's concept of water rose to the late 3rd level, the spirit embryo in Lu Ming's dantian finally exploded with a strong suction force. The energy that had been devoured seemed to have found an outlet and was crazily converted into vital essence, raising Lu Ming's cultivation. Lu Ming's cultivation, which had stagnated for more than half a year, also began to rise rapidly. Early 8th level of the spirit embryo realm, middle 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. When everyone's energy was completely refined, Lu Ming's cultivation rose to the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. However, his bloodline did not rise. All the essence blood had been used to raise the 9 dragons bloodline. Clearly, it was still not enough. After refining all the energy, Lu Ming opened his eyes. At the same time, a lotus platform appeared in his hand. There were 81 petals on the lotus throne, and each petal was filled with dense water concept and water spirit chi. Lu Ming planned to use the purifying lotus platform to raise his concept of water. First, he plucked 3 petals and swallowed them. After refining the petals, they melted in his mouth. There was a cool feeling that flowed down his throat and turned into a cool energy that spread throughout Lu Ming's body. At this moment, Lu Ming seemed to be immersed in endless water vapor. He could clearly sense the concept of water. Lu Ming closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. When the energy of the 3 petals disappeared, Lu Ming continued to pluck 3 more petals and swallowed them. Lu Ming's concept of water started rising rapidly again. After refining the 27th petal, his water concept broke through to the perfection of the 3rd level in one go. It stood side by side with the wind, fire and lightning concepts, and was slightly higher than the earth concept. The concept of earth was only at the peak of level 3 greater mastery. He was still a step away from level 3 perfection. This was not the end. Lu Ming continued to refine the remaining petals. He was charging towards the 4th level of water concept. The pure water lotus throne was extremely useful for 3rd level concepts, as well as 3rd level concepts breaking into 4th level concepts. This wasn't just a saying. It truly had a miraculous effect. Moreover, how terrifying was Lu Ming's current comprehension ability. So when he refined all the petals, Lu Ming actually really broke through the bottleneck in one go, and broke through to the 4th level of water concept. Water concept was the last concept that Lu Ming comprehended, yet he never imagined that he would be the first to break through to the 4th level. Lu Ming opened his eyes and revealed a delighted expression. Being able to break through to the 4th level had exceeded his expectations as well. He originally didn't have any hope of successfully breaking through. After all, the 4th level of concept was the last concept. It was extremely difficult to break through. Many figures of the older generation were stuck at this step and were unable to break through for their entire lifetimes. Lu Ming never imagined that he would break through in one go this time. Lu Ming reckoned that this was greatly related to the enormous karmic luck he possessed that allowed his comprehension ability to increase tenfold. Otherwise, it would absolutely be impossible for him to break through to the 4th level so easily, even if he possessed a treasure like the pure water lotus throne. Of course, the barrier of the spirit god realm wasn't as simple as concept. Some people couldn't break through to the spirit god realm, even after breaking through to the 4th level of concept. Of course, Lu Ming was still a distance away from breaking through to the spirit god realm, so there was no need to consider it for the time being. 10 days have already passed. It's time to go out. Next, I'll travel and cultivate while heading to the ancient Saint dynasty. Lu Ming pondered in his heart. This was his current plan. His cultivation was still weak at the moment. Even if he arrived at the ancient Saint dynasty, he didn't have the strength to take Xian Yinqing away. He planned to travel while risking his life to cultivate and raise his strength. After exiting the mountain river diagram, Lu Ming soared into the sky and headed towards the west. Lu Ming's speed wasn't very fast, but after a day, he still traversed a distance of several million miles. A large city appeared in front of him. On the city gate, there were 3 large words, Sunset Moon City. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. What a coincidence. Previously, Chu Kuang said that if Lu Ming ended his seclusion 10 days later, he could come to the Howling Moon Inn in Sunset Moon City to have a drink with him. Previously, Lu Ming didn't take it to heart. He didn't expect that he would still come to Sunset Moon City. Since I'm here, I'll go take a look at the Howling Moon Inn. Chu Kuang said that there's a grand event happening soon. I wonder what it is. Lu Ming smiled and walked into Sunset Moon City. Sunset Moon City was huge, twice the size of Lishui City. Howling Moon Inn was extremely famous in Sunset Moon City. That was because Howling Moon Inn was the largest inn in Sunset Moon City. After asking a random person, Lu Ming knew where Howling Moon Inn was. After turning a few streets, a 5-story inn appeared before his eyes. "Sir, are you here for a drink? Even in the entire floating mountain range, the wines of our store are among the best." The moment Lu Ming entered the inn, a waiter came up to him. "I'm here to look for someone," Lu Ming said. "Oh, who are you looking for? I have some impression of anyone who enters our inn to drink," the waiter replied. "Chu Kuang," Lu Ming said. "So you're the guest that young Master Chu Kuang is waiting for." Young Master Chu Kuang is in a private room on the 5th floor, and has already been drinking here for 3 days. He said that a friend will come to look for him in a few days. "It must be you, young master. Please follow me," the waiter said. Lu Ming's heart moved. He didn't expect that Chu Kuang was really waiting for him here, and even waited for 3 days. People said that Chu Kuang liked to make friends. It seemed that it wasn't an exaggeration at all. Following the waiter, they arrived in front of a private room on the 5th floor. Before the waiter could announce, a loud laugh came from the private room. "Ha ha ha. I sensed your aura the moment Brother Lu came." Creak. The door of the private room opened. Chu Kuang walked out with a smile on his face. The waiter also retreated. "Brother Chu, were you waiting for me?" Lu Ming asked. "That's right. Since I said that I wanted to be friends with you, I naturally had to wait here for you. However, I originally planned to wait for a day at most. If you didn't come, I would have left. Fortunately you came. It seems that Brother Lu still recognizes me. Haha." Chu Kuang laughed heartily. Lu Ming secretly felt ashamed. He didn't plan to come, but he just happened to pass by Sunset Moon City, so he came to take a look. "Brother Lu, please. The wine is ready." Chu Kuang waved his hand. Lu Ming and Chu Kuang walked into the private room one after the other. In the corner of the private room, there were already several empty jars. It was obvious that Chu Kuang had drunk a lot of wine these days. "Haha, Brother Lu, you must be joking. I'm a wine addict. I come here every once in a while to drink the wine of Howling Moon House." Chu Kuang laughed. Chapter 10:15. Lu Ming opened the lid of a jar of wine and took a big gulp. He could feel the fragrance lingering in his mouth and could not help praising. "Good wine." Chu Kuang also picked up the jar and took a big gulp. Then he looked at Lu Ming and said, "Brother Lu, you didn't use your full strength in the battle that day, right? Why do you think so?" Lu Ming smiled and did not answer directly. "It's just a feeling." Chu Kuang said, "I have a feeling that if I continued to fight, I would definitely lose, and I would lose miserably. So I admitted defeat to avoid embarrassment." Haha. Lu Ming smiled faintly, declining to comment. Of course, he did not use his full strength at that time. "Brother Lu, you're not from the Central Continent, are you?" Chu Kuang suddenly asked. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. His eyes flashed and he said, "Why do you think so?" "I'm just guessing. Every time there's a battle of Providence, all the heroes in the world will take part. They won't miss this opportunity. However, I've never seen someone as talented as Brother Lu in a battle of Providence. I'm just curious. So I'm guessing that Brother Lu might be a peerless genius from the Eastern Wilderness, Northern Plains, Southern Ming, or other places." Chu Kuang laughed. "Brother Chu, you think too much. I've been cultivating in the mountains before, so I missed the battle of fate." Lu Ming said, "Haha, Brother Lu, you don't need to think too much. I was just casually asking. I like to make friends with all the heroes in the world, especially heroes like Brother Lu. No matter where Brother Lu is from, this Chu is determined to make friends with you. Please," Chu Kuang said as he lifted the jar of wine. Lu Ming also lifted the jar of wine and took a big gulp. Chu Kuang's words seemed to be true. He was just asking casually. That was indeed the case. The Battle of Providence had already ended, yet such a prodigy had suddenly appeared. Everyone would be curious. However, Lu Ming was not very worried, because his second body was in the Liangyi Mountain and would occasionally appear during this period. Martial Emperor De would not suspect that Lu Ming would appear in the Central Continent. After all, the twin life forbidden technique was simply too unimaginable. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it either. Moreover, Lu Ming didn't show any of his iconic bloodlines in the Middle Continent, nor did he show any sign of the dragon bloodline eruption. No one would suspect that he was Lu Ming from the Eastern Wilderness. The two drank wine and chatted casually. Lu Ming also took the opportunity to ask Chu Kuang about the specific situation of the major forces in the Central Continent. There were a total of 18 overlords in the Central Continent. There were both humans and demons. They occupied the vast eastern wasteland. Every overlord force had a ruler overseeing it, and they were incomparably powerful. Beneath the 18 overlord forces, there were many other powerful forces. In fact, some of them were so powerful that they even had supreme beings holding down the fort. Lu Ming sighed inwardly. The Central Continent was indeed powerful, and the Eastern Wilderness could not be compared to it. He wondered how powerful the Central Continent ancient sage dynasty was when it was at its peak. Brother Lu, in my opinion, you have a great chance of becoming a second-class prodigy, Chu Kuang exclaimed. Second-class genius? Lu Ming was a little surprised. Oh, Brother Lu, you don't know about this division? In the Central Continent, the top prodigies are divided into 3 classes. For example, I'm a third-class prodigy. In the Floating Mountain sect, there are only 3 prodigies above the 3rd class. The others like Yang Song and Hai Ziming, who you've met before, aren't even in the 3rd class. Chu Kuang explained. Brother Chu, you're only a 3rd-class genius? Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Chu Kuang's talent was definitely not inferior to Xue Jianyi and Ao2's, but he was only a 3rd-class genius. How terrifying would a 2nd-class, or even 1st-class genius be? That's right, I'm only a 3rd-tier prodigy. As for the Hanging Mountain, only the number 1 prodigy of the younger generation can be considered a 2nd-tier prodigy. However, there aren't many 2nd-tier prodigies in the Central Continent. Chu Kuang said. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. If Chu Kuang was only a 3rd-class genius, then 2nd-class geniuses must be stronger and more talented. Lu Ming guessed that 2nd-class geniuses were probably at the level of Emperor God. If they were really at the level of Emperor Gods, there were actually more than 20 of them. That was terrifying. Emperor God was said to be able to inherit the legacy of martial Emperor De. He was a rare genius in the entire history of the Eastern Continent. There were more than 20 such geniuses in the Central Continent. What about the 1st-class geniuses? As if he could read Lu Ming's mind, Chu Kuang continued. Above the 2nd-class prodigies are the 1st-class prodigies. However, there are fewer of them, only 5 of them. They are known as the 5 young giants. Each of them is a figure who suppressed an era. They are extremely terrifying, peerless, and extremely powerful. Chu Kuang's eyes were filled with awe and fear as he spoke. Obviously, the top 5 young geniuses were extremely important to him. The top 5 young geniuses? Lu Ming's eyes lit up, and a strong battle intent flashed past. Although the geniuses at the level of Emperor God were also extremely powerful, and each of them had the potential to become an emperor in the future, they were all incredible existences. However, Lu Ming did not feel too pressured because he had fought with Emperor God before. Although Emperor God was extremely terrifying, Lu Ming was confident that he could suppress Emperor God again in the future. However, the geniuses at the level of Emperor God were terrifying. Lu Ming could not imagine how powerful they were. However, this made Lu Ming even more excited. Lu Ming was not afraid of having opponents. He was only afraid of having no opponents. Only when there were opponents would there be pressure and motivation. The Central Continent was indeed more brilliant than the Eastern Continent. The clash of geniuses was also more intense. The Battle of Providence in the Central Continent must be extremely intense. Unfortunately, I'm not in the Central Continent. Lu Ming felt that it was a pity. Brother Lu, do you remember when I said that there would be a grand event in the near future? 10 days later, 2 second-class geniuses will fight at Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. It will definitely attract a lot of attention. After the Battle of Providence, many geniuses who have been cultivating in seclusion may reappear. Chu Kuang said. There was a flash in Lu Ming's eyes. There was a look of anticipation. He speculated that the second-class geniuses were at the level of Emperor God. A battle between two such geniuses was indeed a grand event. It was absolutely rare, and Lu Ming did not want to miss it. It was a good opportunity to see how powerful the top geniuses in the central continent were. Why are two such geniuses fighting? Lu Ming asked curiously. One of them is Sanguinarum from Cold Blood Hall, and the other is Een Bupo from Sky Eagle Fort. Both of them are the strongest in the younger generation of their respective forces. These two forces have a grudge against each other. Therefore, it's normal for them to be at odds with each other. The two of them exchanged thousands of blows in the Battle of Providence, but were unable to determine the winner. Therefore, they agreed to fight again in 10 days. Chu Kuang explained. Lu Ming nodded. I see. Brother Chu, when are we leaving? Lu Ming asked. We'll leave immediately. However, before going to Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, I need to return to Floating Mountain. Brother Lu, do you dare to come with me? Chu Kuang said. Why not? Chapter 10:16. The Floating Mountain sect was one of the overlords of the central continent. Naturally, it was extraordinary. However, Lu Ming was still stunned when he saw it. In front of them was a boundless body of water. Above the boundless body of water, there was an incomparably huge mountain floating in the air. This huge mountain was so huge that one couldn't see the end of it. It was like a mountain where the ancient gods lived. It was floating 1,000 meters in the air. The floating mountain was like its name. It was really a mountain that floated in the air. Looking from afar, the floating mountain was filled with clouds and water vapor. Under the sunlight, rainbows hung in the air. At a glance, there were countless rainbows. It was incomparably dazzling. It was like a paradise on earth. What a great floating mountain! Lu Ming couldn't help but exclaim. Haha, let's go. Chu Kuang laughed and flew towards the floating mountain with Lu Ming. With Chu Kuang leading the way, they naturally entered the floating mountain without any obstructions. Lu Xiaoqing. At this moment, an incredulous voice sounded. Lu Ming turned his head and couldn't help but find it funny. Isn't that Ling Yunкong? Lu Xiaoqing, you actually dared to come to the floating mountain? Ling Yunкong's eyes widened. After a while, he turned his gaze and saw Chu Kuang. His expression changed drastically. What? Brother Lu is my friend. Do you have a problem with him? I've heard some things about you from Brother Lu. Chu Kuang looked at Ling Yunкong and licked his lips. His eyes flashed fiercely. Ling Yunкong's expression changed again. His face turned pale. He hurriedly said, No, Lu Xiaoqing is your friend. How would I dare to have a problem with him? No problem at all. When Ling Yunкong saw Chu Kuang, he was like a mouse that saw a cat. He was scared to death. Humph, you better not do evil in the name of the Floating Mountain sect in the future. Also, if you dare to touch Brother Lu's friend again, I'll cut you with my saber. Chu Kuang's eyes flashed fiercely as he looked at Ling Yunкong. I wouldn't dare. I definitely wouldn't dare. Ling Yunкong was covered in cold sweat. He nodded repeatedly. Scram! Chu Kuang coldly shouted. Ling Yunкong hurriedly ran away in fear. Ling Yunкong seems to be afraid of you. Lu Ming said. I've taught him a lesson a few times in the past. Also, there was another genius who was similar to Ling Yunкong. The two of them were always running amok. One of them was killed by me. He was afraid that I would kill him too. Chu Kuang laughed. Lu Ming nodded. This Ling Yunкong was scared to death of Chu Kuang. Chu Kuang's talent was far greater than Ling Yunкong's. Even if he killed Ling Yunкong, the upper echelons of the hanging mountain wouldn't stand up for him. The floating mountain was extremely large. The two of them flew for hundreds of thousands of miles before arriving at a cliff. There was a courtyard at the edge of the cliff. Wenjing, I'm here. Chu Kuang shouted as they arrived at the courtyard. Not long after, the door to the courtyard opened, and a young woman walked out. The young woman had a graceful figure and snow-white skin. She wore a light yellow dress and was extremely beautiful. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. The number 3 genius of the floating sky mountain was called Zhang Wenjing. Could it be this girl? The floating mountain sect had 3 third-class geniuses and above, and Zhang Wenjing was one of them. Big brother Chu, you're here. You're late by 2 days. The young woman said. Haha, Wenjing, don't blame me. I made a new friend and drank with him for 2 days, so I rushed over. Chu Kuang laughed and continued to introduce. Wenjing, this is Brother Lu Xiaoqing. Brother Lu, this is my junior sister, Zhang Wenjing. Chu Kuang said. You're Lu Xiaoqing? Before Lu Ming could speak, Zhang Wenjing spoke first. She looked curiously at Lu Ming. Miss Wenjing, have you heard of my name? Lu Ming asked. Of course I have. You suppressed Ling Yunkong and defeated Hai Ziming. The news has spread all over the floating sky mountain. How could I not know? Zhang Wenjing smiled faintly. Haha. I believe Brother Lu's name will spread all over the central continent soon. Chu Kuang laughed. Zhang Wenjing's eyes flickered, and she was slightly surprised. It seemed like Chu Kuang thought highly of Lu Xiaoqing. Obviously, Zhang Wenjing hadn't heard of the purifying lotus platform battle. If she had, she wouldn't be so surprised. Wenjing, let's go to Pillar of Heaven's mountain, Chu Kuang said. This place was quite far from Heavenly Jewel Mountain. They had to set off as soon as possible. Zhang Wenjing nodded. Then, the three of them flew out of Floating Sky Mountain and headed northwest. Cold Blood Hall was an overlord force in the north of Floating Sky Mountain. It was also a neighbor of the Eastern Wilderness. Sky Eagle Castle was west of Cold Blood Hall. Pillar of Heaven's Mountain was located between Cold Blood Hall and Sky Eagle Castle, northwest of Floating Sky Mountain. It was extremely far away. It was at least 50 large domains in the Eastern Wilderness. It was obviously impossible to travel such a distance by flying. First, they took the teleportation formation to the area near Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. Then they flew there. Pillar of Heaven's Mountain was a barren land surrounded by vast mountains. The three of them flew for several days, and suddenly stopped in front of a forest. What a strong smell of blood! Zhang Wenjing's face changed slightly. Lu Ming's and Chu Kuang's faces sank. The two of them had also smelled the extremely strong smell of blood. The smell of blood came from the mountain on the right. Let's go and have a look. Chu Kuang took the lead and flew in that direction. Lu Ming and Zhang Wenjing followed. Soon they found the source of the smell of blood. In the mountain, there was a castle made of stone. It was a small town where many people lived. But now they were all dead. The town was littered with corpses. The three of them scanned the air and estimated that at least 100,000 people were dead. They were all dead. The smell of blood filled the air. No wonder the three of them could smell the blood from so far away. Who is it? Who killed so many people? Most of them were just ordinary people. Zhang Wenjing's face was pale. The smell of blood here is all converging in one direction, Lu Ming said. He observed carefully and found that the smell of blood in the air was all converging in one direction. Could it be someone from Cold Blood Hall? Chu Kuang's eyes flickered. Cold Blood Hall's cultivation was mostly related to blood. But because Cold Blood Hall's cultivation was too overbearing and terrifying, other forces were dissatisfied and put pressure on Cold Blood Hall. Cold Blood Hall also promised that they would not attack ordinary people. But now, most of the people who died here were ordinary people. The three of them looked at each other and slowly walked in the direction where the smell of blood was converging. There's someone there. Zhang Wenjing transmitted her voice to the other two. In the center of the town, a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe was sitting cross-legged. The smell of blood filled the air. Endless smell of blood was converging toward him and entering his body. Bloodthirsty technique. It's an expert from Cold Blood Hall. Let's go. Chu Kuang whispered. His eyes showed a trace of seriousness, and he wanted to retreat. Chapter 1017. Three geniuses with exuberant vital blood have arrived. Haha, the heavens are really on my side. Die. The middle-aged man stretched out his palm and clenched it. In an instant, 5 blood-red ribbons effused out like 5 soft whips that swept towards the three of them. Bang! 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 The three of them erupted at the same time. Chu Kuang slashed out with 2 icy cold rays of light that slashed towards 2 of the blood-red ribbons. Lu Ming executed the Hell Suppression Scripture and slapped his palms down successively towards the 2 blood-red ribbons. On the other hand, Zhang Wenjing slashed out with a sky-blue strand of sword qi that collided with one of the blood-red ribbons. 5 successive rumbles resounded. Lu Ming's figure moved over 10 steps back successively, and Chu Kuang was in a similar state as well. On the other hand, Zhang Wenjing was in a slightly better state, and only moved a few steps back. After all, she was only dealing with a single ribbon, a domain enlightened spirit god. The three of them thought at the same time, and their expressions were extremely solemn. Since a casual attack was able to force the three of them back, it was absolutely a domain enlightened spirit god. The middle-aged man was slightly surprised when he saw that he hadn't killed Lu Ming's group of three with a single attack, but he was soon overjoyed. Haha, the three of you can be considered to be third-rate geniuses. Your vital blood is dense. Kill. The middle-aged man roared with laughter as he waved his 10 fingers successively, causing 10 blood-red ribbons to coil around Lu Ming's group of three. The ribbons seemed to be light, but they were terrifyingly formidable, and they whistled through the air as they tore through the air. Let's charge out of here. Chu Kuang roared loudly as a 7th-grade god-rank bloodline appeared above him, and he directly executed bloodline fusion. He didn't dare be careless in the slightest when facing a domain enlightened spirit god, because carelessness would lead to death. Zhang Wenjing executed bloodline fusion as well. Lu Ming didn't execute bloodline fusion, but he erupted with 3 strands of dragon energy, and every single one of his attacks was extremely terrifying. Bang! Bang! The three of them joined forces and executed their strongest attacks. They instantly destroyed the 10 blood-red ribbons, and then they intended to fly towards the distance. Don't even think of leaving. Blood cage. The middle-aged man still didn't stand up, and he just sat there cross-legged while slapping his palms down. Suddenly, countless blood-red ribbons appeared in the sky, forming a cage made of blood-red ribbons, sealing the three of them inside. The three of them fought back, and the crimson cage kept shaking. However, they couldn't break it open for a while. Slash! The crimson-robed middle-aged man shouted coldly. With a flick of his finger, 3 terrifying crimson-colored saber lights slashed towards the three of them. Bang! 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 The three of them tried their best to resist the blood-red saber light. However, in the end, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing's bloodline trembled nonstop. They were almost blasted back into their human forms. Lu Ming also felt a burning pain all over his body. His blood and qi were in turmoil, and he almost vomited blood. Fortunately, Lu Ming's defense was terrifying, so he was able to successfully block it. Break! Lu Ming continued to increase the power of the suppressing hell heavenly art. After several punches, the blood cage finally collapsed. The three of them rushed out at top speed. You want to leave? No way. The crimson-robed middle-aged man stood up abruptly. Blood energy surged from his body, and he slashed out 3 consecutive saber lights that crossed 10,000 meters in an instant, slashing towards the three of them. The 3 saber lights were incomparably terrifying, as if they could split the three of them in half. Not good. Chu Kuang was shocked. He had a feeling that he would die under this saber light. Crash! At this time, Lu Ming's forehead lit up, and the mountain river diagram flew out. It circled the three of them, and then flew forward rapidly. Bang! 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 The 3 saber lights slashed the mountain river diagram, but they didn't tear it apart. The mountain river diagram blocked a part of the force, but a part of the force still passed through the diagram and landed on Lu Ming, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjing. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing immediately reverted to their human forms and vomited blood. Lu Ming's body also shook violently. His skin was cut open and blood flowed freely. Lu Ming endured the pain and flew forward with Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing. Damn it! The crimson-robed middle-aged man roared, but he didn't pursue them. His expression changed, and he continued to sit down cross-legged and absorb the blood energy in the surroundings. Lu Ming's group of 3 flew for over 100 kilometers before they descended into a gorge. After they descended, they sat down cross-legged and healed their injuries. In comparison, Lu Ming's injuries were not serious. The dragon scales under his skin had blocked most of the force. After 2 hours, Lu Ming was fully recovered, and the recuperation was completed. He glanced over and noticed that Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing were still healing. There's still a huge gap between me and a domain enlightened spirit god. Lu Ming fell into deep thought. The gap between the spirit embryo realm and the domain enlightened spirit god realm was too huge. There was an enormous chasm between these two realms. Most importantly, the conditions to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm were too high. Ordinary cultivators or ordinary geniuses were utterly unable to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm. Those that were able to break through to the domain enlightened spirit god realm were geniuses amongst geniuses. This caused the gap between the two realms to be even greater. In fact, the further one cultivated, the greater the gap between the realms would be, and the more terrifying it would be. It would be difficult to surmount. Lu Ming was only at the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm now. It was too difficult and practically impossible for him to surmount such a huge gap and battle a domain enlightened spirit god realm expert. Perhaps it would be possible once he attained perfection in the spirit embryo realm. That crimson-robed middle-aged man is probably injured and is healing. Lu Ming thought to himself. If the crimson-robed middle-aged man wasn't injured, they might not have been able to charge out. After a few more hours, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing finally opened their eyes, ending the healing process. Thank you for your help this time, Brother Lu. Chu Kuang stood up and expressed his gratitude to Lu Ming. If it wasn't for Lu Ming, they probably wouldn't have been able to charge out. You're welcome, Brother Chu. Lu Ming waved his hand. That expert from the Cold Blood Hall should be at the first level of the spirit god realm. I don't know why he was injured, so he massacred the entire town and used the blood of the entire town to heal himself. We just happened to encounter him. Chu Kuang analyzed. Lu Ming nodded. Chu Kuang's thoughts were similar to his. However, massacring an entire town of ordinary people to heal himself was too cruel. The three of them chatted for a while before they left and headed towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. The matter of a domain enlightened spirit god realm expert wasn't something they could meddle in, nor did they have the ability to do so. After flying for another 2 days, a towering mountain appeared in front of them. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain, as its name suggested, was like a pillar that was inserted into the ground and pierced through the clouds. It stood among the numerous peaks and could be seen at a glance. According to legend, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was transformed from the weapon of a supreme expert in ancient times. At this moment, there were still 2 days before the battle between Sanguinarum and Yin Bupo. The three of them settled down in a small town nearby. The small town was bustling with people coming and going. After the Battle of Providence, this is the first battle between the second-class Sky Prides. It has attracted a lot of people. Chu Kuang looked around and sighed. The people walking on the streets in the small town were all experts. Any one of them was at least at the spirit embryo realm. There were men and women of all ages. Chapter 10:18. The three of them casually found an inn to stay in and waited for the arrival of the battle. Lu Ming made the best use of his time to comprehend the earth intent and temper his true origin energy and intent at the same time. 2 days passed in a flash. 2 days later, countless figures flew towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Lu Ming's group blended into the crowd and arrived near the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. When they arrived, they noticed that the area was already surrounded by people. At a glance, there were no less than 10,000 people. This showed the influence of second-grade prodigies in the central continent. The central continent was boundless, and it was 7 or 8 times larger than the eastern wilderness. It was full of outstanding people, geniuses, and experts. However, how many second-grade prodigies were there in such a vast land? Below the 5 young giants were second-grade prodigies. There were only a total of 20 or so second-grade prodigies, and they were rarely seen. In the Battle of Karmic Luck, most people didn't have the qualifications to watch the battle. That was why so many people were attracted this time. They all wanted to see exactly what cultivation realm the second-grade prodigies had attained, and how terrifying their combat strength was. In the crowd, there were old people and some young people in their teens. These young men were the most excited. They were the younger generation, and had missed the Battle of Karmic Luck. They wanted to see how powerful the prodigies, who were half a generation older than them, were to motivate themselves. So many experts. Chu Kuang's gaze swept across the crowd. He discovered many geniuses who were on par with him. They were third-class geniuses. There were also some who were not third-class geniuses, but were not to be underestimated. For example, Hai Ziming, Wu Kong, and Ling Yunкong from the floating mountain were among the crowd. There were even a few old men who stood in the sky and emitted extremely shocking auras. They were clearly domain spirit gods. This battle had even drawn the attention of domain enlightened spirit gods. Suddenly, demonic chi surged into the sky as a black-robed young man walked through the air and attracted everyone's attention. Junyu! It's Junyu of the Devil Mountain! Someone exclaimed when they saw this young man. Junyu of the Devil Mountain is here too. Zhang Wenjing and Chu Kuang exclaimed as well. Lu Ming's heart jolted as well, and he couldn't help but size Junyu up carefully. During this period of time, Lu Ming had asked Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing about the central continent. Chu Kuang talked the most about the younger generation of prodigies. Lu Ming had some understanding of the prodigies of the central continent. Of course, it was mainly the 5 young giants and 22nd-grade prodigies, as well as the various overlord forces. The Demon Mountain was also one of the dominant forces in the central continent. Junyu was one of the more than 22nd-class prodigies. This person is indeed very strong. He gives off a very terrifying feeling. He's definitely a genius at the level of an emperor god. Junyu of the heavens. Junyu. Apparently, the battle between Yin Bupo and Xue Luozi had attracted the attention of other sky prides. Junyu stood silently in midair with his hands behind his back, and he looked straight ahead, as if no one could draw his attention. He didn't even spare a glance at those domain enlightened spirit gods, and he seemed as if he didn't take them seriously at all. Indeed, with his natural talent, it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the spiritual god realm. In the future, he was almost certain to reach the exalted realm. His goal was to become an emperor, so how could he care about ordinary spiritual gods? The crowd continued to wait. Jing Kongling of the floating mountain. Suddenly the crowd exclaimed again. Junior sister Kongling is here. Chu Kuang's eyes lit up as he looked at the sky. A young lady in a watercolored long veil was walking through the air. Her body was filled with water vapor. She looked to be in her 20s. She was extremely beautiful, and her graceful figure was faintly discernible in the water vapor. Her bare feet were like the most beautiful art piece in the world. Every step she took would cause a cloud to appear in the sky. She was walking on the cloud step by step. The scene was silent as if everyone was attracted by the lady. So she's Jing Kongling. She really is peerless. Lu Ming couldn't help but praise her in his heart. Chu Kuang was ranked second in the floating mountain, and the number 1 genius of the floating mountain was Jing Kongling. She was a lady with terrifying natural talent. At the same time, she was also a second-grade genius. She was equally famous as Junyu, Yin Bupo, and the others. Moreover, Jing Kongling was one of the 5 great peerless beauties of the central continent. Everyone in the central continent knew about her. In the past few days, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing had mentioned her many times to Lu Ming. Lu Ming had been extremely curious about this peerless genius for a long time. Lu Ming couldn't help but compare all the women he met with Jing Kongling. He noticed that only Xian Yanqing could compare to Jing Kongling. The others like Mulan's and Autumn Moon were slightly inferior. Jing Kongling, I never expected that this battle would draw you here as well. Junyu's gaze finally moved. He looked at Jing Kongling, and a trace of a burning light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Aren't you here as well? Jing Kongling said faintly. Her voice was tranquil, and when it entered one's ears, it gave a very comfortable feeling. It was as if it could calm one's restless heart. Just like her name, she was like an ethereal fairy, untainted by even a speck of dust. Brother Jun, sister Kongling, you're early. A sweet and clear voice rang out. Not far away, another woman stepped through the air and arrived. This lady looked younger than Jing Kongling, but her appearance was not inferior to Jing Kongling's at all. Her small face was a little pale, but she had a sickly beauty that made people want to go up and protect her. Sandalwood Fairy from the Medicine King Valley. Many people widened their eyes. Another second-grade genius, and also one of the 5 great beauties of the central continent. Many people felt that they were going crazy. They felt that this trip was too worth it. This time, before the two main characters of the battle had arrived, there were already peerless geniuses coming one after another. Even 2 of the 5 great beauties of the central continent had come. It was worth it, too worth it. Many people had traveled hundreds of millions of miles just to see one of the 5 great beauties, but they could not. Today they could see 2 of the 5 great beauties. What was not worth it? Sandalwood Fairy. Chu Kuang's eyes also lit up. He stared at Sandalwood Fairy with a lecherous look, which made Zhang Wenjing, who was beside him, unhappy. In fact, Zhang Wenjing was also a rare beauty, but compared to Jing Kongling and Sandalwood Fairy, she was far inferior. Sister Sandalwood, why are you here too? Jing Kongling stepped forward and came to Sandalwood Fairy's side. The 2 peerless beauties stood together. Almost everyone's eyes fell on the 2 women. Many people's eyes were burning with passion, but no one dared to flirt or even hit on them. Although the 2 women were peerless beauties, they were also famous geniuses. They were extremely terrifying. If anyone dared to flirt with them, it was guaranteed that they would die without knowing how. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect both of you to come. I'm so honored. There was a loud laugh, and a bolt of lightning flashed in the distance. In the next moment, a young man in a purple feather robe appeared at the top of Sky Pillar Mountain. The young man had a cold gaze and a hooked nose. His eyes were extremely sharp, and there were traces of lightning flashing in them. In Bupo. Someone spoke out that person's name. Chapter 10:19. Hee In Bupo. Why don't you take a look in the mirror? Are the 2 fairies here for you? A cold laugh was heard from another direction. A crimson light flashed, and a young man in a crimson robe appeared on the other side of Pillar of Heaven's mountain. This young man's face was slightly pale. He was very handsome, and gave off a feminine feeling. Blood Luazi, you look like you're half dead. Are the 2 fairies here to see you? In Bupo sneered. The 5 great beauties of the central continent. Not only were they beautiful, but they were also extremely talented. Naturally, they had countless suitors. Many second-grade geniuses were their suitors. There were even the 5 great young lords. There were rumors that In Bupo and Sanguinarum were both Sandalwood Fairy's suitors. Now that the 2 supreme talents had arrived, the crowd finally shifted their attention from Jing Kongling and Sandalwood Fairy to In Bupo and Sanguinarum. Today, the 2 of them would have an earth-shattering battle. Lu Ming also looked at the 2 of them. Whether the second-class supreme talents of Middle Continent were at the same level as the Emperor Realm would be revealed soon. Humph In Bupo. You were lucky to escape from the previous battle of Providence. Today I'll kill you. Sanguinarum sneered. Haha you'll be the one to die today. In Bupo sneered. He let out a long cry, and turned into a huge divine eagle. The divine eagle was surrounded by terrifying lightning energy. In Bupo wasn't a human but a monster. Sky Eagle Castle was a monster force. Most of them were eagle-type monsters. Of course, there were also other flying monsters. However, the majority of them were eagle-type monsters. It was said that the castle master of Sky Eagle Castle was a powerful eagle emperor. In Bupo had the bloodline of a divine beast, Latian Sacred Eagle. The concentration of the bloodline was shocking. Boom. Sanguinarum said it casually, but he didn't dare to underestimate In Bupo. He unleashed his aura, and a crimson light shot up to the sky. Kill! In Bupo let out a long cry and flapped his wings. Terrifying lightning energy gathered, and turned into lightning swords that slashed towards Sanguinarum. Crimson Divine Saber. Sanguinarum clenched his fist and endless crimson light gathered to form a crimson saber. He shouted and slashed out. The crimson saber radiance swept across the space and clashed with the lightning swords. Boom! 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 The sword chi and saber chi swept out in all directions. Many of the weaker cultivators were shocked and retreated. Lu Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing stood still as they watched on the ground. In the blink of an eye, In Bupo and Shueluazi had exchanged dozens of blows. Shueluazi, I haven't seen you for half a year. In Bupo's voice. More than enough to suppress you. Sanguinarum's. Is that so? In Bupo sneered. He flapped his wings and let out a long cry. The blood in his body boiled, and the sky was filled with lightning. Swoosh! Bupo's wings seemed to have turned into a blade of lightning, cutting through everything and slashing toward Xue Luozi. Bloodthirsty realm. Xue Luozi let out a long roar as his blood chi soared into the sky. A semicircular blood-red light shield spread out in all directions. A terrifying devouring force spread out. Even though they were far away, many people felt their blood become restless, as if it was about to leave their bodies. Cold blood Hall's bloodthirsty skill, Chu Kuang said solemnly. Lu Ming's expression changed. He felt that the bloodthirsty skill was similar to the 9 dragons' devouring power. However, the bloodthirsty skill only targeted blood and wasn't as overbearing as the 9 dragons' devouring power. Boom! Bupo's lightning blade slashed onto the crimson light shield, and a deafening roar was heard. However, he was also affected by the bloodthirsty skill. His blood was restless, and his combat strength was affected. He couldn't use his full strength. Squeak squeak. At this moment, an ear-piercing sound was heard. A giant bat appeared above Sanguinarum's head. The bat's body was blood-red. Its eyes were extremely cold and filled with a bloodthirsty glow. Blood-winged heavenly bat was a terrifying divine beast. Obviously, Sanguinarum's bloodline was blood-winged heavenly bat. There were 8 dazzling chakras around the blood-winged heavenly bat. Level 8 divine class bloodline. Sanguinarum's bloodline rank was the same as an emperor god's. Sanguinarum used bloodline fusion and turned into a blood-winged heavenly bat to fight against Bupo. Terrifying energy shot out, causing the space to tremble unceasingly, as if it would be torn apart at any moment. It was already completely distorted. The terrifying forces spread out for thousands of miles. Many mountains were swept by the forces and turned into dust in an instant. However, most of the forces landed on the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. However, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain seemed to be formed by an ancient strong practitioner's weapon. The terrifying forces didn't cause any damage to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. At most, they only left some marks on it. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged more than 100 moves, but the outcome was still undecided. God, so powerful, too powerful. Is this the combat strength of a second-grade prodigy? An elder with a perfect spirit embryo sucked in a cold breath and was extremely astonished. He had a feeling that with his perfected spirit embryo cultivation, he would be crushed into dust by the terrifying forces if he were to rush forward and get within 100 meters of the two of them. A perfected spirit embryo martial arts practitioner wouldn't be able to resist at all. Their cultivation should be at the peak of the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm. However, their combat strength is too terrifying. I'm afraid they are close to the spirit god realm. Even if they can't fight with the spirit god, they wouldn't be too far off. If they break through to the perfected spirit embryo realm, they might be able to fight with a spirit god realm practitioner. Terrifying. A spirit embryo can fight with a spirit god. This is too terrifying. The onlookers discussed as they watched. They were all shocked. Even the domain enlightened spirit gods had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. They are indeed powerful. They are definitely prodigies on the same level as the Emperor God, Lu Ming thought to himself. His gaze was solemn. Now he was sure that the second-grade prodigies of the Central Continent were definitely prodigies on the same level as the Emperor God. The fact that there were more than 20 such prodigies in the Central Continent was truly astonishing. I wonder what realm the Emperor God has reached, Lu Ming thought to himself. Half a year ago, the Emperor God's cultivation was at the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. Now that more than half a year had passed, it was normal for the Emperor God to reach the peak of the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm. It was even possible for him to step into the perfected spirit embryo realm. If they met, he would still be Lu Ming's greatest enemy. Am I their match with my current combat strength? Lu Ming secretly measured his own combat strength. During the Battle of Providence, Lu Ming relied on the combination of the Path of Inscription and martial arts to suppress the Emperor God. However, the Emperor God wasn't completely defeated. Now Lu Ming's Path of Inscription and martial arts were separated, so his combat strength was slightly weaker. However, compared to the Battle of Providence, Lu Ming also cultivated the concept of water. With the combination of 5 concepts, The power was extremely shocking. It was much stronger than 4 concepts. Even without the path of inscription, Lu Ming's combat strength was still strong. He was confident that he could suppress the Emperor God in a battle of the same level. However, he was in the central continent now. To prevent his identity from being exposed, Lu Ming couldn't use some of his techniques. He couldn't use all of his dragon power, so his combat strength was greatly reduced. In addition, Lu Ming's cultivation was only at the peak of the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. If he encountered either the Sanguinarum or Bupo, Lu Ming wouldn't be a match for them. My cultivation must increase as soon as possible. If I reach the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm, I won't be afraid of them even if I can't fuse my bloodline in a real battle. Chapter 10:20. The heavens and earth shook continuously. Half of the sky was filled with lightning, and the other half was filled with blood chi. Lightning and blood chi collided continuously. The crowd could not see Bupo and Sanguinarum's figures at all. They could only see the light and shadows intertwining. The battle lasted for 2 hours. The lightning and blood chi in the sky dissipated at the same time. The 2 figures stood on one side of the sky, panting heavily. Their eyes were sharp and solemn as they stared at each other. It was a draw. It was said that during the Battle of Luck, the 2 of them had fought for 1,000 blows, but it was still a draw. It was the same today. Sanguinarum, I didn't expect you to be so capable. You're lucky today. Bupo said coldly. I should be the one saying that. I'll spare your life today. Sanguinarum sneered. The 2 of them did not continue to fight. They had used up a lot of their energy after the fight. Moreover, there were many experts around. They had to save some energy in case someone attacked them secretly. Looks like they won't fight again this time. It's a draw again. Sanguinarum and Bupo are really strong opponents. That's true. Sky Eagle Fort and Cold Blood Hall are close to each other, and the 2 forces are constantly fighting. Bupo and Sanguinarum have been fighting since they were young. They have never won. However, it's a good thing that they have a lifelong opponent. Both of them have improved tremendously. It's a good thing to have an opponent. This is a golden era. There are so many geniuses. In the past, geniuses like Bupo and Sanguinarum would be invincible. However, there are more than 20 of them now. There are even the top 5 young geniuses. Around them, many people could not help but sigh. There were too many geniuses in this generation. Second-class geniuses like Bupo and Sanguinarum had the chance to break through to martial royal realm. In the past, it was considered good if there were 2 or 3 of them in each generation. But in this generation, there were more than 20 of them. And there were even more powerful 5 giants. Even in the Eastern Barren Territory, Southern Underworld, Northern Plains and Western Desert, there were many geniuses. Geniuses were as common as clouds, competing with each other. This was a glorious era. Everyone knew that the battle was over. Some people were preparing to leave. Everyone. Sandalwood is preparing to host a Pill King banquet 7 days later, at the Pill King courtyard. I'm inviting all the geniuses here to drink and discuss the Tao. Is everyone willing to give this little girl some face? At this moment, a crisp and pleasant voice sounded. It was Sandalwood Fairy. Everyone's eyes lit up. Haha, Sandalwood Fairy is personally hosting the Pill King banquet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How can I not go? Demonic Mountain Junyu was the first to speak as his eyes flickered. Thank you, Brother June. Sandalwood Fairy bowed slightly. It's our honor to be able to participate in Fairy Sandalwood's Pill King banquet. As long as you don't mind, I will definitely pay you a visit when the time comes. The others scrambled to open their mouths, hoping to attract Sandalwood Fairy's attention. Then this little sister thanks everyone. This little sister will take her leave first. Everyone can stay in Dan City for the time being. 7 days later, you can head to Dan King Hall. After saying that, Sandalwood Fairy bowed slightly, then stepped into the air and left. Then, Jing Kongling also turned around and left, like a fairy in the clouds. Bupo, let's fight another day, Sanguinarum said, then turned into a ray of bloodlight and left the place. Bupo sneered and also left. Then the others also left. Brother Chu, what is the Pill King banquet? Lu Ming asked Chu Kuang. The people of Medicine King Valley are all inscriptionists. Their main focus is alchemy. Medicine King Valley's elixirs are famous in the world. Some of the outstanding talents in Medicine King Valley will melt their best elixirs into wine every once in a while and invite all the talents to taste it. At the same time, they will befriend all the talents in the world. Therefore, although Medicine King Valley is not an overlord force, its influence is still terrifying. Chu Kuang explained. Lu Ming nodded his head. This tradition was unique. Let's go to Dan City first. Dan King Hall is in Dan City, Chu Kuang said. Then, the three of them flew towards Dan City. On the way, Lu Ming learned more about Medicine King Valley. Medicine King Valley used to be an overlord force a long time ago. But now, because there were no sovereigns, they had stepped down from their position as the overlord force. However, their strength was still terrifying and could not be underestimated. In Medicine King Valley, there was more than one supreme martial artist. They were good at alchemy and had good relations with all the major forces. Dan City was built as a subsidiary of Medicine King Valley. There was a sea of people, and it was very lively. Medicine King Valley sold all kinds of elixirs from Dan City. They also bought all kinds of spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers. Therefore, it attracted a large number of merchants to buy and sell elixirs. Dan City was not far from Tianju Mountain. In just half a day, the three of them arrived at Dan City. So many spiritual herbs, so many spiritual herbs. Unknowingly, Dandan appeared on Lu Ming's shoulder again, looking around furtively. On both sides of the streets of Dan City, there were almost all spiritual herb shops and pill shops. The rich medicinal fragrance came from all directions, lifting one's spirit. No wonder Dandan was looking around. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing glanced at Dandan and felt that this little turtle was quite interesting. Brother Chu, Miss Wenjing, how about we find a place to stay? Lu Ming said. Lu Ming wanted to find a place to go into seclusion. Okay. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing nodded, and the three of them found an inn to stay. In the room of the inn, Lu Ming's heart stirred and his figure disappeared. In the room, only the mountain river diagram was left floating. In the mountain river diagram, Lu Ming sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. With a wave of his hand, a large pile of origin stones appeared around him. Let's use the origin stones to break through to the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Previously, when he met the spiritual god from Cold Blood Hall, Lu Ming knew that there was a huge gap between him and a spiritual god. This time, when he saw the battle between Sanguinarum and Yin Bupo, Lu Ming felt a lot of pressure. Now that he had many restrictions and his cultivation was not high enough, he would most likely not be a match for geniuses like Sanguinarum and Yin Bupo. Therefore, he urgently needed to increase his strength. Originally, he did not plan to use the origin stones to increase his cultivation, because it would definitely consume a lot of origin stones. Now that he did not have many origin stones left, he wanted to keep some as backup. However, he did not care so much now as it was more important to increase his strength. Roar! The 9-dragon bloodline appeared and opened its mouth to swallow. A terrifying devouring power erupted and tens of thousands of origin stones exploded. The 9-dragon bloodline devoured the majestic origin chi and started to refine it rapidly. Circulating the true battle dragon skill, the origin chi was refined continuously and turned into true origin chi. The true origin chi gathered in the spirit embryo and condensed continuously. The spirit embryo became stronger and smaller in size. After tens of thousands of origin stones were refined, another tens of thousands of origin stones were refined. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In 3 days, Lu Ming had refined more than 300,000 pieces of primordial stones. Soon, his eyes flashed and he continued to refine. Another day passed, and he had refined almost 100,000 origin stones. Boom! As if something was broken, Lu Ming's aura surged, and the true origin chi in his body roared. It was many times stronger than before. Chapter 10:21. Whoosh! At this moment, Lu Ming opened his eyes and revealed a satisfied look. However, the consumption of the ores made his heart ache. He had refined 400,000 ores. This was too shocking. However, after breaking through to the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm, Lu Ming's battle power had increased by a large margin. His vital essence was boundless, and he could unleash the power of the suppressing Hell Heaven skill. I wonder if I can fight against embark and Sanguinarum with my current battle power? Lu Ming's heart stirred. Sanguinarum and embark were both at the peak of the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. Lu Ming was at the early stage of the 9th level of Spirit Embryo Realm. This was similar to when he fought against the Emperor God in the Battle of Fate. However, Lu Ming had to use all his methods and formations to suppress the Emperor God. Now Lu Ming didn't have the path of inscription, but had merged the concept of water. If Lu Ming could use all his methods and execute bloodline fusion, Lu Ming was confident that he could suppress Sanguinarum and embark. However, if he couldn't execute bloodline fusion, Lu Ming wasn't confident. However, at least, Lu Ming was confident that he wouldn't lose. There are still 3 days before the Elixir King banquet. Let's take a walk around Elixir City. Lu Ming stood up and walked out of his room. He sensed that Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing's rooms were empty. They should have gone out for a walk. Elixir City was like a huge commercial city. There were shops everywhere, and countless types of spirit herbs and elixirs. This was an eye-opener for Lu Ming. In some shops, one could even buy level 8 elixirs. However, the price was terrifying. Some places were filled with stalls. The stall owners would sell weird things. Some could be rare treasures while some could be trash. This place was called the Treasure District. It mainly tested one's luck. If one was lucky, they could buy something of high value. Of course, one also needed to have good eyesight. This place attracted many people. There were many people on the streets. Lu Ming strolled among the crowd, looking left and right. On his shoulder, Dandan was also looking around. After arriving here, Dandan became spirited and declared that no treasure would be able to escape its eyes with its eyesight. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything after walking around. The things here were strange. Some of the so-called spiritual grasses were actually weeds from the roadside. They were used to fool people. There were also some broken spiritual weapons that were used to pretend to be weapons left behind from ancient times. There were even some people who casually took a few stones and said that there were diluted treasures in the stones. Furthermore, they were sold for a very high price. Once it was sold, it would be a huge profit. That's Lu Ming, the purple jade in front. Yes, the purple jade that chick is buying. Buy it, it's of great use. Lu Ming was looking around when Dandan's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Dandan looked very excited. Lu Ming's spirit jolted as he looked forward. In front of a stall, 2 young women were standing in front of it. One of the young women was receiving a piece of purple jade from the stall owner. The purple jade that Dandan mentioned was this one. That purple jade is very ordinary. Is it a treasure? Lu Ming was surprised. How can you compare with my eyesight? Lu Ming, buy it and you'll make a fortune. Dandan shouted. Lu Ming didn't hesitate and strode forward to the stall. He pretended to casually glance at the purple jade in the woman's hand and said casually, this purple jade is of good quality. It's just right to buy it and make a jade pendant for my sister. Brother, how much is this purple jade? The stall owner was a middle-aged man. At this time, he smiled innocently and said, Young master, you're late. This purple jade has just been bought by this young lady. She bought it? Lu Ming felt that it was a pity. He then sized up the young lady. The young woman was very beautiful. She was in her 20s and could be considered a rare beauty. Behind her, there was another woman. Judging from her appearance, she should be a maid. Miss, can you give this purple jade to me? Lu Ming cupped his fists and said, Hey, this purple jade was bought by my young lady first. Why should she give it to you? The maid behind the woman was the first to shout. It's nothing. I just saw that this purple jade was of good quality and wanted to buy it and make a jade pendant for my sister. Since this young lady bought it first, then I won't take it from you. Lu Ming smiled, cupped his fists and was about to leave. Although it was a pity to miss it, since it had been bought, Lu Ming wouldn't take it by force. Young master, please wait a moment. At this time, the young woman called out and Lu Ming stopped. Actually, I only bought this purple jade because I thought it looked good. It's not of much use. Since you value it, I'll give it to you. The young woman stepped forward and handed the purple jade to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was quite surprised and didn't take it for a while. Kid, take it quickly. You'll regret it if you don't. Dandan kept transmitting her voice to Lu Ming. Lu Ming pondered for a moment and reached out to take the purple jade, saying, I'm Lu Xiaoqing. Thank you for giving me this jade. May I know your name? If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay this kindness. I'm Zhou Xian. Young Master Lu is too polite. The young woman smiled slightly. So it's Miss Zhou. Is Miss Zhou also here to participate in the Pill King banquet? Lu Ming asked. Yes, it seems like young Master Lu is here for the same purpose as me. Zhou Xian smiled faintly as she looked around. The two chatted for a while before Lu Ming left. Dandan urged Lu Ming to go back and ask Lu Ming to cut the purple jade. There would be a surprise. Miss, why did you give that purple jade to that kid? After Lu Ming left, the maid said unhappily, Silly girl, where is this place? In Dan City, there are many outstanding young men participating in Mu Tanxiang's Alchemy King banquet. This person looks extraordinary. Maybe he's a genius. Using a useless piece of purple jade to make friends with a genius, why not? Zhou Xian smiled faintly. Mrs. Wise. The maid flattered. Soon Lu Ming returned to the inn. After entering his room, he directly entered the mountain river diagram. His palm glowed and the purple jade appeared in his hand. This purple jade looked very ordinary. Could it be that there was really a rare treasure in it? Lu Ming, cut this purple jade. Be careful. Dandan instructed. Lu Ming stretched out his finger. True Yuan spread out and condensed into a sharp sword, slowly cutting towards the purple jade. The purple jade was about the size of 2 fists. Lu Ming carefully cut it. When he was about to cut it halfway, a faint milky white halo spread out. There was really something in the purple jade. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He slowly cut the purple jade around him. Finally, a milky white jade the size of a longan appeared in Lu Ming's hand. What kind of jade is this? Lu Ming was a little curious. This was because this piece of jade looked ordinary. It did not look like a rare treasure at all. Kid, is this vitality stone considered a rare treasure? Dandan grinned. What? This is a vitality stone. Chapter 1022. It was actually a primordial stone. Lu Ming was ecstatic. A primordial stone was a very magical treasure because it could store a martial artist's true essence. A martial artist only needed to transfer their true essence into the primordial stone and store it in advance. When they needed it, they could directly absorb the true essence from the primordial stone. Because it was originally a martial artist's own true essence, there was no need to convert it, and it could be used directly. In this way, there was no need to worry about true essence drying up. A primordial stone was definitely a rare treasure for a martial artist. Sometimes it was a treasure that could save one's life. Moreover, it could be used for a long time. It rarely appeared in the market, and once it appeared, the price would be terrifyingly high. Lu Ming never thought that there would be a primordial stone in this purple jade. I don't know if this primordial stone can withstand my true essence. Lu Ming thought. Different primordial stones could store a limited amount of primordial qi. An ordinary primordial stone could not store a sovereign's true essence. If a sovereign's true essence were to enter, the primordial stone would probably explode. Different primordial stones could store different amounts of primordial qi. Let's give it a try. Holding the primordial stone in his hand, Lu Ming continuously transferred his true essence into the primordial stone. Sure enough, once the true essence entered the primordial stone, it was stored in the primordial stone. After a while, Lu Ming's true essence almost all went into the primordial stone. It can withstand it, that's great. Lu Ming was ecstatic. In this way, Lu Ming could use true essence greatly increased. The hell-suppressing heaven skill's current power was equivalent to a mid-level low-grade divine martial skill. The consumption of true essence was too terrifying. Lu Ming had not dared to use his full power before. Otherwise, the true essence in his body would be drained in an instant. But now Lu Ming was not afraid. Even if it was drained in an instant, with the primordial stone, he could instantly replenish his true essence. In this way, Lu Ming really had another trump card. Now that he was using the Hell-Suppressing Heaven skill, although he could not fully display the power of the Hell-Suppressing Heaven skill, the power was much stronger than he could only use a few levels of power. Next, Lu Ming took out the Origin Stone and began to recover his true essence. After his true essence was completely restored, Lu Ming continued to input his true essence into the Receiving Essence Stone. He predicted that this Origin Receiving Stone should be able to withstand his true essence at the first level of the Spirit God realm. In other words, before Lu Ming broke through to the second level of the Spirit God realm, this Origin Receiving Stone would be Lu Ming's trump card. When Lu Ming continuously poured in his true essence 5 times, Lu Ming stopped. Quintuple Jin Yuan was equivalent to 5 times his Jin Yuan, which was enough for the time being. After recovering his true essence, Lu Ming walked out of the inn. There was only a day left before the Pill King banquet would begin. More and more people gathered in Pill City. Other than those who had watched the battle between Im Bupo and Sanguinarum, there were others who had rushed over after hearing the news. Of course, most of them were from the younger generation, because the one who organized the Pill King banquet was Fairy Sandalwood. The people who gathered were naturally young people. It was not good for the older generation to mingle with these young people. Lu Ming brought Dandan and strolled around, hoping to gain something. Unfortunately, after walking around in a big circle, there was nothing. Lu Ming laughed at himself. He knew that he was too greedy. It was really lucky that he was able to get the Origin Receiving Stone last time. He could not help but feel apologetic towards Zhou Exayan. Originally, Zhou Exayan had bought it first, and then gave it to Lu Ming. Gradually, Lu Ming strolled to the north side of Pill City. There were fewer buildings here, and instead there were many hills. Hey, I smell a fragrance. What a strong medicinal fragrance. There are spirit herbs. Dandan's nose suddenly twitched. Then, it rushed off Lu Ming's shoulder and ran forward at an extremely fast speed. This guy! Lu Ming was speechless and chased after it. After crossing a hill, they arrived in front of a valley. Dandan slowed down a little and rushed left and right into the valley. Lu Ming's brows furrowed. This valley was filled with inscription formations. Now that Lu Ming did not have the spirit fire, he could not break the formation. However, even if he could not break the formation, he might not be able to stop Lu Ming. Although Lu Ming did not have the spirit fire, his understanding of the path of inscription was still there. Moreover, as his second body comprehended the path of inscription, he could also feel it. During this period of time, his second body had been cultivating wholeheartedly in Yinyang Mountain. The speed of his improvement was astonishing. His second body did not have any distracting thoughts. Coupled with the providence, his comprehension had increased tenfold. When he cultivated wholeheartedly, his progress was much faster than Lu Ming's main body. His understanding of the path of inscription was improving every day. Therefore, although Lu Ming did not have the spirit fire, he still had the ability to see. Although the formation of this valley was brilliant, Lu Ming could still see the flaws with a single glance. After pondering for a while, Lu Ming stepped out. He moved forward and backward, left and right, heading into the valley. Soon, he arrived at the depths of the valley. In the depths of the valley, Lu Ming saw a herb field. There were many types of spirit herbs planted in the herb field. The medicinal fragrance was incomparably rich and floated in the valley. These spirit herbs are all level 7. Lu Ming was shocked. Lu Ming discovered that almost all the spirit herbs in the herb field were level 7, and there were no less than 1,000 of them. At this moment, Dandan was rolling around in the herb field. Its eyes were shining with excitement as its claws constantly grabbed the spirit herbs in the herb field and stuffed them into its mouth. Dandan, hurry up, Lu Ming urged. It was impossible for this large herb field to be ownerless in Pill City. It must have been planted by the experts of the Medicine King Valley. Stealing other people's spirit herbs in other people's territory. Even Lu Ming was a little apprehensive. Like a whirlwind, Dandan quickly stuffed over 100 spirit herbs into its mouth. They were all level 7 upper grade. This guy's eyes were sharp and he picked the best ones. Where did this thief come from? How dare you steal from here? Suddenly, a delicate voice rang out, and a beautiful figure rushed out from the valley. In the air, inscriptions filled the air and the formation shone. Rays of light wrapped around Dandan. Not good. Dandan was shocked and ran wildly. Its 4 limbs retracted into its turtle shell. The turtle shell danced in the air and dodged the formations one by one. It flew toward Lu Ming. Mu Sandalwood. Seeing the beautiful figure, Lu Ming was shocked. The beautiful figure in the valley was actually Sandalwood Fairy, Mu Sandalwood. Lu Ming's body glowed, and his physical body rapidly changed into another appearance. He grabbed Dandan and quickly retreated. Stay here. Sandalwood Fairy's jade-like hands danced, and the spiritual fire between her eyebrows glowed. On the ground around Lu Ming, formations constantly appeared. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He glanced around and took a few steps. Every step was very mysterious. He stepped on the weak points of the formation and retreated quickly. In a few breaths, Lu Ming retreated 1,000 meters. Sandalwood Fairy exclaimed softly and stopped. Her beautiful eyes revealed a very strange look, and she did not continue to attack or pursue. Seizing this opportunity, Lu Ming flashed rapidly. Very soon, he left the canyon and disappeared. Strange, it's really strange. There's clearly no spiritual fire, but he can see the weakness of the formation at a glance and avoid the attack of the formation. It's really strange. This is the first time I've encountered such a thing. Sandalwood Fairy whispered with curiosity in her eyes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.